What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Gregtech New Horizons series. Today we got episode 2 for you. So episode 2 today is going to be all about establishing ourselves a base and maybe getting ourselves onto the Steam age. Obviously episode 1 was just a short little intro episode, but today we're really going to get into some content. Just a reminder again, these first few episodes, a lot of the footage is just pre-recorded. I'm going to start streaming again soon, but I basically just recorded it all with OBS to get things going. But anyways, on to the video itself. So obviously you can see here, I found myself a nice little area sort of near spawn where we were at last night. And I really do like the little river we have above us. We got some water again to our left here. So it's a pretty good spot overall. And of course, most importantly, it's got 80% humidity, which is a huge factor we were looking for. So obviously, like any good Minecrafter, we need to go ahead and get ourselves a nice flat area. And for me, that involved a lot of shovels and a lot of dirt and getting rid of a lot of grass. But thanks to YouTube, we can just skip ahead. So as you can see here, I've started my nice little dirt hole and added a couple trees because we don't have too many nearby, so those saplings are kind of important. But now we can get on to a little bit of crafting. First, we're going to start off with a nice little chest here. I have heard that storage can be a little bit of a nightmare in this game if we don't get organized, and as you'll find out in this series, I do not do a good job of that. But I'm going to actually not take responsibility for that, and I'm going to blame the fact that there are a billion items in this game, and not only are there a billion items, but there's a billion difficult recipes, and so you have to learn how to batch craft. It's entirely my fault. Anyways, moving on though. So I'm finding out quests are good for a couple reasons. One, it makes me feel good and there are a lot of fireworks in the air, but also because we get a lot of interesting items out of it, items that we can't normally get or craft yet. One of the most important things obviously being these complex foods, like these gingered rhubarb tarts I just got, basically just helping to sustain us early game, which is one of the complexities we face in this really difficult mod pack. Speaking of food, I went ahead and completed a couple of quests here just so I could go ahead and unlock the You Reap quest and get ourselves some carrots, which we could then go ahead and plant and get our farm started here. Alright, now that we have our minuscule little carrot farm up, we're going to go ahead and get some more quests done for the quest book and get ourselves closer to Steam Age. Alright, with this last sheep here, we are going to go ahead and finish off the last quest we need to unlock the bed quest, which instantly completes because we've already made the bed and we can go ahead and accept that reward there. But you're going to go ahead and take that oak door. But what that means for us is huge. It means we can move on to the next tier for the first time in this mod pack. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Stone Age, Tier 0, the first of many. So obviously the first thing we're going to do is finish off a couple of these easy free quests. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start our first retrieval task of the mod pack, which is going to be that 128 sand. Now, obviously, that 128 sand is going to be getting ourselves on the road to building a coke oven. Anyways, here's us gathering 128 sand. Now, the next step is going to be gathering 128 clay, which we've started doing here. And there we go. That's 128 clay gathered. And let's go ahead and grab our rewards here. I almost always go for the food, obviously, just make my life a little bit easier. I then went and grabbed a little bit more gravel and sand because I knew I would need a lot of both of them, so I figured why not. Next, I decided to go ahead and finish the basic processing quest because I wanted to go ahead and get that chisel, which is really cool for base building because it lets you create all sorts of new blocks that are not in vanilla Minecraft. So with the stone we got from that quest, it is time to build ourselves our very first Gregtech tool, the mortar. Now, like I mentioned before, Gregtech has a lot of new items and tools that we're going to have to learn how to use. The first of those being the mortar. Obviously, all of these tools are something we can later automate down the line, but first things first, we got to make ourselves the basic tools. I also do want to quickly say that while I'm going to try to do my best to educate you guys a little bit on the mod pack, especially in this early game, because there's a lot going on and it's pretty overwhelming when you get in the world, the Discord and wiki that they have and the community is really helpful. So a lot of the times you can just go into the Discord and into the help section and ask a question and you'll get an answer within a minute, usually maybe 30 seconds, or you can just go ahead and look it up on the Discord, which is super helpful and updated all the time. But again, like I said, I'm still going to try to help as much as I can and make sure that you guys can follow along, because this mod pack can get confusing. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and take that first mortar and sacrifice it to the Gregtech gods so we can get ourselves a lot of flint and build ourselves a bunch more mortars. These mortars here only have a durability for, I believe, half a stack of items, so they run out quickly, so we're going to need to make a lot of them in the future. In Gregtech, there's a lot of tiers of items, and we're going to go ahead and get into that, especially once we get into Tinker's Construct here in a little bit, but yeah, it's important to understand that these early tools that we're going to use are going to degrade quickly and disappear very, very fast, so we're going to have to make a lot of them. For example, the flint mortar only has a durability of 12,800, while the steel mortar has a durability of 51,200, so obviously a lot higher. Another new interesting aspect of Gregtech is that animals explode if you don't kill them with a knife. Yep, that's right, they explode. And it's happened to me a few times, and you've seen it already. It's ridiculous. Next, we're going to finish up this bucket quest here, which is going to get us very close to unlocking the Tinker's Construct quest along with the Coke Oven quest, which are two huge milestones we're about to hit. I quickly, though, decided to move my farm into the base and get it a little bit more organized. Next, I went ahead and took all of that clay and sand I mined from earlier and made the unfired clay bricks, which we're going to use to go ahead and make our first Coke Oven. So we went ahead and made ourselves a second furnace here to fire up those bricks, and we went ahead and popped them into the furnaces. Now we had to go and grab ourselves a little bit more wood because we were running low and we needed some fuel as well as we needed some for future endeavors. And along with that, we decided to go ahead and clean up our base a little bit because with 53 bricks in each furnace, it was going to take a little bit of time. The last quest in our way before we unlock the Tinker's Quest is going to be to get 16 pieces of paper, and paper, of course, in Gregtech is not so easy. To get paper in Gregtech, you need 8 wood pulp along with a water bucket in the middle, and to get wood pulp, you have to go ahead and use a mortar on some logs, so it's a 1-for-1, so it's pretty expensive early game as you only have those wooden tools. It's important to note too in Gregtech, there are actually a few other ways to get paper early game that you should be aware of, such as this sustainable papers quest to start us off. In the sustainable paper quest, we can see we need a paper bark sapling. To make a paper bark sapling, it's actually pretty easy. All we need is a jungle sapling and a piece of paper. Now, if you don't have a jungle sapling or you're not near a jungle biome, it's actually pretty easy to go ahead and grab yourself a jungle sapling. So we can scroll to the bottom of the mod pack where it says coins, coins, coins here and click on this tab. In this tab, you'll see a lot of various items. What we use this tab for is we can take the coins that we get for finishing various quests throughout the mod pack and we can exchange them for items we might need, such as a seed bag. We exchange 5 farmer coins for a loot bag full of seeds. Now, for the paper bark sapling, we're going to go to this vanilla seeds tab here, and we can exchange 5 forest ranger coins and get ourselves 5 jungle saplings, which again is what we need for the paper bark tree. The last option we have to make paper we'll learn about a little bit later, and it's actually by using 2 smooth stone slabs and crushing something called chad into 2 pieces of paper. So now we have the paper crust complete, and we're going to go ahead and head back to the base. All right, now we can go collect our smelted coke oven bricks and make our 26 coke oven blocks that we need to create our first Gregtech multi-block. So I actually didn't realize that I needed the forming press quest done to unlock the coke oven quest. So while you will see me building the coke oven, I actually don't get that quest unlocked until a little bit later on, which is entirely not my fault. All right, we got a nice little spot here next to our bed to go ahead and place down our first ever coke oven, one of what I've heard to be a lot that I have to go ahead and build. And boom, there we go. Coke oven is built. Let's go. It's crazy, but putting down my first coke oven in multi-block felt really exciting in Gregtech, even though there were obviously many to go. And pretty quickly I realized that I actually had no wood to actually put into the coke oven, which was making it entirely useless. And as I was going to chop some wood, I found out that I didn't even have an axe. So first I had to chop some wood to make an axe, then I had to use the axe to get more wood to then put in the coke oven. Here is me now realizing that something is wrong and I can't submit this quest. I actually tried taking it apart and putting it back together again because I thought maybe I had messed that up somehow, but obviously that didn't fix it. Alright, so unfortunately this is where things get a little bit iffy. So at this point in time in the video, I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to be streaming or making videos at all. All I knew is I was just recording my content in case I wanted to use it. Now, that being said, unfortunately, there were times I forgot to turn it on. That is my fault, and unfortunately, we're going to miss that content, but we're just going to have to fill in the gaps and kind of move on. Luckily, it is pretty early game and I haven't done too much, so the lapses we have won't be too important. Now, that being said, this is kind of the quest page that we're going to be seeing here right before we jump ahead in time to a different clip. We're about to do that Tinker's quest, and again, we already do have that Coke oven. Alright guys, if you paid attention to the top left corner of the screen, you can see that we jumped from day 6 to day 14. Now, the main difference you're going to see off the bat is that we have ourselves some flint tools and an iron pickaxe, and obviously we're down here in a mine getting ourselves some ores. So we have a couple things we need to cover before we get going. The main one being Tinker's Construct. Alright, so I'm going to do a brief Tinker's Construct here because I don't know the entire mod pack myself. I'm kind of new, but just a little basic coverage since we're jumping ahead in time. So first things first, obviously you need to do the quest itself and get yourself these 4 essential things. You need a bunch of patterns, so this holds all the patterns. This is how you make the patterns. This is how you make specific parts through the patterns, and then this is how we make the tools themselves. So to make Tinker's tools, we have to go ahead and put a bunch of parts together. So as an example, here would be a wooden pickaxe head, which would be one of the things we use to make a pickaxe. Tinker's has its own unique items, such as a wooden binding, which is one of the things that you need to make a pickaxe, but obviously you can make it out of a bunch of different materials. Now, once we have our Tinker's tool, we can go ahead and see what benefits it has for us. Tinker's is a little bit different, and it's kind of cool because you have 2 different levels on your tool. The first is the mining level for a pickaxe. So on a pickaxe, if you are a tier 3, let's say, you're 1 tier below mining obsidian, after you level up your tool 1 time, you can actually upgrade that tool. So now you can mine obsidian if it was tier 4. You can mine the next tier up. It only happens 1 time, but it's very useful. The second thing is you get a tool level, and that tool level adds modifiers to your tool. Modifiers are basically just like enchantments for vanilla Minecraft. Gives you things like Fortune 3 and, haste or speed. But the way you get these is a little bit different. For example, the way you get the haste is you actually put 50 redstone onto your tool. The way you get fortune is you put lapis onto your tool. So it's really useful if you find these veins early, which is a whole other thing we'll talk about, because ores and veins are an entirely different thing in Gregtech. So I've decided to not go ahead and teach you guys about the ores and the veins because I'm an idiot and every time I try to explain it, I mess it up. So let's just have you guys go to the wiki like I did because I am an idiot. Thank you. Alright guys, so as we walk back to the base, obviously you can see I've planted a bunch of different trees here. I've made myself a little cobblestone house, expanded my little dirt platform here, and I've gone ahead and built myself a second coke oven. Inside you can obviously see here it's a very basic starting house. Now that I'm finally at the part where I'm starting to collect ores, once you click on an ore in Gregtech, it's very intimidating. You start seeing this entire page with a bunch of percent chances for other dust, and dust does this, and this machine does that, and you have no idea what any of these things are. So the next big step we had to take in the Stone Age was to go ahead and get ourselves some bronze dust. To do that, we needed to get ourselves some tin and some copper. Thankfully, we already had some tin laying around, so we went ahead and smelt that along with everything else we had just sitting in our chests. And then came finding copper, and I was getting gregged. Or so I thought. In my head, I was basically thinking, man, I already found tin. Copper must be also readily available because those are 2 common resources in most games. Boy, was I wrong. Again, also quick tip for you guys who haven't really played the mod pack. I'm not going to get too into the veins and how they work because I don't really know how to explain it the right way. But the main thing you'll see me doing here is that if you hit F9 3 times in the game, you get to see the ore chunks and their 3x3 chunk radius on your map, and you can see the pillar left of me here with the blue lines is the center of the middle chunk. So if you dig around that pillar, it's just the easiest way to get down to the center of a vein and find out what you're looking at. So the first vein I went into to look for copper, funny enough, I actually found diamonds. In my head, though, all the veins looked the same, or I thought they did, where they were all very readily available and there was a lot of resources in each vein. So I kept digging down and I was very confused that I wasn't finding any diamonds. It took me a few times coming back and mining to realize how scarce they were and how deep I actually had to dig to find them. One of the things I did find in the time that I played that I didn't record was actually there was a redstone vein right next to my base, which is really nice. The next chunk I went down, I quickly found rock salt, which I didn't need right now, so I left that alone. Then we took a nap before our next vein. The next vein we went down turned out to be an iron vein, which it wasn't what we were looking for, but actually was still pretty useful because we're going to need so much iron moving forward, so I decided to stay and mine a little bit of it. Before moving on to the next vein, I decided to go back, grab a little bit of my charcoal from my coke ovens, and then start smelting up some of this iron. Alright guys, there we go. We finally got our first iron bar. The game is giving us some fireworks to celebrate. I actually forgot I was going to get some copper from the iron vein through malachite, because the actual veins themselves have multiple different ores in them. It's just they have a main and sort of a secondary ore. So as you can see here, I was trying to figure out how to use my iron to make myself a pickaxe head, but obviously I'm figuring out here that you need a smeltery to do that, which is something I currently don't have. So the smeltery is what allows you in Tinker's Construct to actually melt down the bars and turn those into tool parts. You can use the pattern chests and these normal wood patterns for the basic materials, but then after stone, which you use to get the patterns themselves for the smeltery, you have to go ahead and actually melt it all down, use the smeltery, and use lava, which is a whole nother problem. So even though I just figured out I couldn't make myself a Tinker's Iron Axe or pickaxe, I did realize that I could make myself a vanilla Minecraft Iron Axe. This was going to be really useful because I still needed to get a bunch more wood to keep putting in my coke furnace to keep creating charcoal and fuel, but obviously the wood and flint tools are not that efficient, so it's taking a long time. This is also a good intro to the tools that I'm going to need for the future, just creating a bunch of things with recipes, such as the file, the screwdriver, and the hammer, all kind of things you'll need to create most items in Gregtech. So here we go, we get ourselves our first vanilla Minecraft axe, which is probably going to disappear quickly because I'm just going to use it to chop a bunch of trees. As you can tell, getting sidetracked in Gregtech is pretty easy, because I have completely at this point forgot about the mission to get copper. Alright, after that little wood cutting session there, we can go ahead and split up a full stack and get about 32 logs into each one of these coke ovens. Now, as I've already explained to you, I'm a man with high intelligence. So I went ahead and made myself an iron shovel, and decided to not read the giant red text on the bottom of the shovel. So I get all the way over to go mine something, just to realize how stupid I actually am, where these big red words say, hey, you can't mine with this. So I walked back to the house really quickly to go ahead and make myself a flint shovel so I could keep looking for that copper. We quickly find ourselves another tin vein, which obviously is super useful, but again, we need to find copper more than anything right now. That's the most important thing. Like I mentioned before, I thought that most of the veins looked the exact same, where there was just a ample amount of resources in each one, but that's not the case. So the next vein I went to, I kept mining and I figured there might not actually be any ore down here, but eventually, of course, I ran into some gold, which is also very scarce, just like the diamonds, so that's good to know for the future. I then spent the next little bit, again, just trying to find some copper. I really need some copper to move on, get myself some bronze, and progress towards the steam age. Unfortunately, I went through about 6 or 7 different veins, couldn't find any. Found some mallowberry bushes in between, which is really nice. But nope, the search for copper continues. Even though I knew the next vein I would hit was going to be copper, I decided to stop and do a few things around the base. Which of course includes chopping some wood for the coke ovens for fuel, also planting some more bushes in our garden to get ourselves some more food. We also went ahead and made a couple more chests because we were getting low on storage space, and of course try to keep ourselves a little bit more organized throughout these chests. So next I decided to work on the overall base layout a little bit. I already talked about this a little in the first episode, kind of what I wanted to do here, but essentially I want to flatten a bunch of stuff out, create a level ground where I can build a bunch of these early multi-blocks and kind of get myself set up and learn about the mod pack. This first base does not have to be anything fancy, so we don't want to spend too much time creating something crazy. Lastly, I went ahead and just expanded my farm a little bit. It's always important to keep getting a little bit more crops in the ground just so you have some food to snack on if you can't make any complex foods. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead and call the video there. I really hope you enjoyed. I think we made a lot of progress today, making our way through the Stone Age here. I know I said I wanted to get to Steam Age, but frankly, that just, like I mentioned, takes a while, and it would be a really, really long video. Instead, I would rather just get one video out to you guys so you have some content to watch, and decide if you even like my videos. But anyways, again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.